Thank you very much. I don't have any prizes to give out. I'm sorry. I should have come more prepared. However, I hope you enjoyed the talk and take that as a prize. I'm incredibly humbled to be here. A little bit nervous, but honored. As a marketer in this industry, I never thought I would be able to take the stage at a conference like Hack in the Box. As a matter of fact, when I talked to Dylan about doing this talk, I wanted to ask him if he remembered what I did for a living. And once I got past that, I decided to say yes as quickly as possible before he realized he asked the wrong Jennifer. But I'm very happy to be here. This is a topic that's very near and dear to my heart. You might be wondering why, as a marketer, I'm talking to you guys about the risks of marketing and research and the technical side of security, but a lot of it has to do with the point that there's always been a divide between the folks that market in security or tell stories around security and those that actually develop products, who do research, who hack, reverse engineer. And in order to fix the challenges that we have, we need to help each other. And I'll go through some examples of what that looks like. Now, I will admit that I hate the title of my talk. I wrote it, but I don't like it. And I think you guys probably know as practitioners, as engineers, that your end state isn't necessarily always what you set out to have it be. The good news is that I'm still covering what's in my abstract, but as I was going through and putting together the talk, I landed more on this, which probably would have terrified you guys. It drives me insane that my people don't understand that even though we are not the technical ones, we're not the ones doing the hacking, we're not the ones doing the breaking and the fixing of things, they don't understand that as the people who carry the message, it is just as much our responsibility to reduce harm as it is the practitioners. It is also our job as communicators. That's what we do, is we basically communicate. If you've seen Office Space, the Thomas Mikowski, we hand things to other people. It's a little more complicated than that, but we pass information. But we also advocate for the community. We need to advocate where folks either don't have the skills or the impetus or the interest to do so. So who am I and why am I talking to you about this? Why me versus any other marketer in the industry? When I was born a baby. And when I was born, I don't think my parents were like, gosh, I hope she grows up to be a CMO of a security company. But I love what I do. I wanted to be a fashion designer. I wanted to be a mafia princess. Long story, tell you that over a beer sometime. But I've been doing security marketing now for almost 19 years. And I also had to add in here that I'm obsessed with baby goats. Has nothing to do with security, but when I asked my team at work, what do you want me to convey to this crowd, these thought leaders at Hack in the Box? And they said, that you love goats. So there, I've done that. I love my team, want to be supportive. So a little bit silly, but I am extremely passionate about security. I'm extremely passionate about the end goal, the mission of securing the user. And that might sound strange for someone who has established a career as talking about it versus doing it, but we all have our skills. We all have our limitations. We all have the things that we're very good at. I happen to be very good at things that are related to communication, so I apply that. And I want to take that a step further and change the way that my people, the marketing folks, talk about security. I understand that this is what we look like to most of you. We're terrifying. But I'll touch on something that I started to say earlier about us working together. There's a lot of, I'm on Twitter, I'm on the Facebooks, although that's not popular right now, but I still love it. And there's a lot of debate there's a lot of people who complain about security marketing. There's a lot of people that complain about fear, uncertainty, and doubt, or FUD. And they should. Some of the stuff I see, I have a hashtag, it's called Fire Your Marketer. Because there are just some things that shouldn't be done, and I'm going to go into examples there. But the way that I want us to not be this scary anymore. I want us to be partners, whether you are working for a consultancy, whether you are working for a company that develops products that they are selling that have nothing to do with security, but ultimately need to be secure, or you work for a security vendor. You don't necessarily ever have to see marketing as your friend, but look to ways to educate us, call us out, make sure that we're properly representing the work of the company. We're not violating disclosure. We're not creating scare tactics. Because if a lot of folks, I feel like I'm unique in the way that when I started in security marketing, I immersed myself in the community. It was terrifying, to be perfectly honest, but I was able to make a lot of friends that kept me honest and called me out when I did really stupid things, and I learned, but not everybody has that. So people need to rely on their teams at work to do that as well, or their colleagues in school. So this is very simplified. What do manufacturers do? They try to make stuff that doesn't harm. Now, we know that there's a lot of stuff that gets out in the market that is broken or has flaws or has vulnerabilities, but it's not like whoever creates, whatever internet-connected device is like, gosh, I really hope somebody owns this someday and destroys someone's life, right? The intention is good. The intention is to make life easier. What do security vendors do? Sell stuff intended to reduce harm. We could talk all day about if that actually works or not. I have a biased opinion on that, so I won't dig into that. Some stuff works better than others, but the intention is good, even if the intention is also to grow the company. What are researchers, engineers, practitioners? Practitioners is kind of my word for the millions of different titles that folks like you have, so please don't feel left out if I don't say it. Reduce harm. You do security to reduce harm. Sure, it's fun to break stuff. Sure, it's fun to code. It's fun to do all those things that I don't know how to do. I'm glad you guys can do it. I feel safer, thank you. But it's to reduce harm. But what do marketers do too often? Create risk. We create risk by putting information out too soon. We victim shame when someone has a breach. We sensationalize news. Sensationalize research, sensationalize discoveries. None of that is good. And that's what I talk about when I said earlier, or that's what I was talking about when I said earlier that even marketers have a responsibility to reduce harm. So let me give you some examples. I have 3. In my abstract, one of the things that I mentioned was virtue signaling around bug bounty programs. I'm not digging into that too much. As I was researching it, talking to friends about it, I'm a big supporter of bug bounty programs. I just want to say, and as an aside, my biggest challenge is the marketing teams for companies that have bug bounties that are pushing this out like, we are the most secure company in the world because we have a bug bounty. And that's a challenge, because we all know that more needs to be done than that. But let me get into more specific examples. I'm sure most of you know what this is. So, Heartbleed. When OpenSSL disclosed its flaw, they disclosed it as the heartbeat flaw, which referred to Heartbeat, the technical monitoring system in OpenSSL. Google and Codenomicon were credited with the discovery. One of them might have taken it a little too far. This logo for Heartbleed, the name of Heartbleed, and this logo were created by the marketing team at Codenomicon, which is now part of Synopsys. In an interview, the former CMO said that the domain happened to be available, Heartbleed sounded good. I'm paraphrasing, obviously. Yes, we did the logo, but it was never our intention to market. So, little marketing 101. See, this is your prize. You guys get to learn a little bit about marketing. When you put a logo on something and you name it and you make noise, it's called branding, which is marketing. So they absolutely intended to market and to draw attention to themselves. But what did they also do? They created chaos, absolute chaos. Now, obviously, Heartbleed, the flaw in OpenSSL, was a big deal. It needed attention. I remember I was working at Cisco at the time, and I think myself and probably 20 others were working all weekend long with everything from customer to partner communications. I won't even get started on the things that the folks, let me try that again, on the things that folks like you would need to do to patch, remediate, all that stuff. The big challenge that marketers create when they sensationalize vulnerability, especially a logo disclosure like this, is it catches attention of the people that maybe you don't want their attention. So suddenly the CEO, the CFO, the board of directors, somebody's mom calls the CEO or something like that, and your CISO or your head of IT is getting a call saying, do we have this heartbleed thing? No, and of course that's not a real question, but it's creating more, it creates distraction, it creates challenges, and suddenly there's a rush for security teams to communicate upward about what is going on rather than putting their attention on fixing the problem, all because of not marketing. CTS Labs and AMD last month. Oh, I heard something. I hope it was a good sound. Last month, CTS Labs, a small Israeli security consulting firm, decided to take on AMD via press release. I'm going to pin that for a second. Press release, remember that. Via press release, announced 13 ODAs in their Ryzen processors, AMD's Ryzen processors. They gave AMD little to no time to do anything about it. They claimed, even though they didn't release any information, they claimed that they had a third party verify that the vulnerabilities are real, the ODAs are real, rather. AMD ultimately verified it and presented its plan to take care of it. The thing, I think in the beginning, it violated disclosure. A lot of people were like, what the what? Why did you do that way? CEO of CTS came out and said, we probably leaned a little too far on our skis. Didn't say that exactly. I'm not exactly sure why I said it that way. But it's out there, and I'm glad they're doing something about it. Okay. So then the CTO does a letter, writes a letter, an open letter, and it starts with a disclaimer on top. And the disclaimer says, I am a technical person. I don't like PR. We're going to go back to that pin and press release. They did this to AMD via a press release. They don't like PR, but let's use a press release to call this company out. So there's one. And then proceeded to talk about how coordinated disclosure or responsible disclosure, whatever you want to call it, is broken. And the reason that it's broken, he said a lot of things, but this is what I honed in on. The reason that it's broken is because people don't know that they're exposed until there's a patch. And they've spent all that time being vulnerable. Now, we all know the whole backbone of responsible coordinated disclosure is to make sure the bad guys don't know that there's even more stuff out there to have fun with and compromise. So in his world, they did this because they wanted to send the message that disclosure is broken, that folks need to know sooner. Now, I agree that there needs to be more conversations around coordinated disclosure, and there's lots of caveats and lots of dependencies. But to just do that to a huge company, saying that the problem is that people don't know well enough, not thinking about the fact that they're also alerting every malicious actor out there these vulnerabilities exist. And with a company like AMD, they're not going to be able to fix that quickly. So that is a big problem. This one I ranted about quite a bit, so if you couldn't tell. This last one, my last example, I have a ton. This is one that I've always found a little bit interesting, and again, none of these are black and white. Security is not black and white, so there's always different ways to look at these things. Ransomware vaccines. And again, the way that they're marketed. So there's ransomware. I'm not going to pick on a variant. Vendor A and B, and sometimes C, comes out with a fight to get a blog out, or a press release, or whatever, digital strategy of any sort, saying, hey, there's a flaw in this ransomware. hey guys, there's a flaw. This is how you can get around it. Do you really think with live malware, the malware author's not going to read that? So in the case that I was talking to a colleague of mine about, malware author fixed it, created a significant amount of challenge for the security researchers that were working within their trusted communities to help with protection, all because a marketing person probably said, and I've been in these meetings, and I've been this person, admittedly, hopefully recovered, oh my gosh, that's so exciting, we'll get so many page views if we say that we have this. Right? So basically you've disclosed, you've helped a malicious actor, cyber criminal, get away with something when you do that. And a lot of times these things happen, I actually feel bad. A lot of times these things happen to PR agencies when their clients are not super savvy about security and they just have to do it because they'll lose the business. That's a whole other conversation. A lot of times the researchers get blamed when really, chances are, they had no idea this was going to happen until they saw it on Twitter or the corporate blog and probably yelled significant amounts of expletives when they saw it. There's ways to disclose. There's ways to share that you have information without giving people all the information or giving the bad guys all the information that they need to fix their problems. That's the opposite of reducing harm. So it's not really the old way and the new way yet, but in my dream world, we're heading in this direction. We're heading toward the new way. And that's why I want to talk about this at this conference. That's why I've talked about this a lot. I mentor my team this way. We have to get away from that. We have to change the perspective that marketing is not responsible for the outcomes of its behavior when communicating somebody else's work or research. So this is what I want to do. And when I say we, I'm not just talking about we in marketing. We, industry, community, folks in this room. We're going to change the way businesses and marketing leaders interact with researchers. We're going to raise the bar for ethics in marketing and business to be more in line with the ethical standards that we would like to see in security, or we would like to say we have in security. We're going to empower researchers and analysts to advocate business and marketing leaders for better practices. You're probably thinking, she's crazy. How is that ever going to happen? I talked to someone the other day about this, and he was like, that's great, Jen. So could that ever happen? I don't know. I sure hope so. I know it can get better. I know that I try to do my part to make it better. I know others that try to do their parts to make it better. They listen. They learn. They'll humbly say, I don't understand what you're talking about. Can you explain this thing to me so I don't take it out to the market and make it sound ridiculous or it doesn't scare people? Like, you've all seen it. Oh my gosh, in today's dynamic threat landscape, you must buy this thing or you will be breached, just like that person was breached, and then you'll get eaten by a bear. It's ridiculous, some of the stuff you see out there. We just, in a small way, if we as marketers or business leaders, and I keep saying business leaders too, because sometimes these things are handed down from CEOs, et cetera, to marketing teams, and they have to, so I'm holding everyone accountable. I'm sure my CEO loves that. But also it's the responsibility of the technical community to call out, basically call bullshit on marketers and say, don't do that. That's wrong. Don't scare people. Because there's a lot of chatter within the community about how bad it is, but I rarely see direct constructive feedback. And I'd like to see that. So one of my ideas, I'm talking about this pie in the sky. What if we had a standards desk? So news organizations, major broadcasts, I know NBC does, New York Times, Washington Post, the Register, all over the world, a lot of the big publications have standards desk. And what they're responsible for is assessing any story that comes in that could have a risk especially those on people's physical safety, counterterrorism. That's an example that I know really well from working at Flashpoint and the relationship we have with NBC. You have conversations about these things that are happening, and the standards desk determines, is this accurate? If it's accurate, is there value in putting it out, or is it just going to scare people? And does it have integrity? So why, whether you are a security vendor, a consultancy, a company that makes stuff that has to make it secure, why wouldn't you have the same type of standards for putting out anything that could scare people or put them at risk, or may not be accurate, or may not have integrity? So again, is this a utopia? Could this work? We sort of do this at Flashpoint. Don't worry, notice I haven't talked about what we do. I'm not going to market to you guys today. It's really killing me not to, honestly, but I'm not going to. But in terms of how we navigate this ethics and standards process. So we in this is the marketing team. We partner closely with what we all call the makers in the company. So intel and research, product engineering, R&D, innovation. Work very closely with those organizations. I think one of the normal processes for marketers when working with these teams is largely to just say, oh, they put out this content, oh, they have this stuff going on, let's just take it, let's just go do this, and then let's just put a bow on it and put it over here. It's more complicated than that. Work with them. Don't treat them as a personal content repository. Work with them as partners. So we're besties with our head of intelligence, so Tom Hoffman. Some days I think he wishes that we didn't pay so much attention to these boundaries because he's too busy running a team that's actually doing some pretty serious stuff. But we work very closely together, or if not us, delegates from our teams, when we have, whether it's a paper, a blog post, a media opportunity, press release, what have you, to ensure that, I'm going to jump to the bottom here, that there's no scare tactic, no OPSEC is compromised, all sources are protected, personas are protected, and that's specifically relevant to what we do. And then, and this is always a touchy one, but if there are active investigations, that they're not disrupted. So we had an experience last year, end of last year, where the Department of Justice came out and publicly thanked us, as well as Akamai, for our help in the indictments of the Mirai botnet authors. And that's great. And we knew about this long before the DOJ wanted to say anything publicly. And there was some conversation about, when do we say something about this? I raised my hand and I said, well, not until they do, because you don't want to, in that case, we absolutely did not want to interfere. Now, again, investigations is a hotbed issue. I don't want to dig too deep in it. I only have that one example. But if my team didn't work closely with the intel and research team, who knows? Who knows what could go wrong in these situations? We've seen what can go wrong in these situations. And then jumping back up to the third bullet, we're all challenged to learn about security outcomes. Even the non-technical folks on the marketing team are required to understand what it means that we're doing and what the end state is, which is to reduce harm. And I joked about my team earlier with the baby goat stuff. They really wanted me to say that, and that's great. But they also, when I asked them for feedback, they said, talk about how marketers shouldn't use FUD. Talk about how we need honest input from researchers. Talk about how we need to stop scaring people or putting out news that's not real just to get headlines. And it did my heart so good to hear that from a marketing team. So the ultimate job of marketing is to sell stuff. But the job of marketing is to protect users. There's currently an imbalance in that way of thinking. It's not a natural thought process for a marketer. And it's not a natural thought process for a technical person, practitioner, engineer, researcher, all the words I've been using, to care about what the marketers, the communications folks do. And it should be a little bit. We have to self-police, but we also need, the input. So is this utopia, where it's all mixed in together? We're never going to mix selling and research, or we shouldn't. I shouldn't say never. Some people do that. We never should mix selling and research. But if the folks that are on the front lines communicating broadly about disclosure, new products, anything really, threat actor profiles, etc., if we understand all the bits and pieces, if we can think about it collectively in terms of what are the risks when we're thinking about not just the business implications, but we're thinking about all the parties that are involved. And that includes the bad actor, and that includes all the unknown unknowns. What if marketing and business folks started taking those things into account before we started putting information out? Would that, one, leave space for the things that people really need to know to better protect themselves? Would it reduce the amount of fear and reaction and distraction, aka heartbleed? I think it would. It's not the end-all be-all. It's not what's going to make security better and ultimately stop these breaches and all the things that we're looking at stopping. But there's a lot of focus right now on securing the human. And in order to secure the human, you have to educate the human. And that's not just your users making sure that they patch, making sure that they know how to protect their own OPSEC, et cetera, et cetera. It's also helping their business units that aren't security savvy understand the implications of what they're doing. So I just said this, education's imperative. So I created this. For a marketer, I'm not very good at PowerPoint or Keynote or design or basically anything visual. I was actually jealous of Marion's stick figure yesterday because I couldn't even do that. It was really cute. But I created this decision tree. Very, very basic. Again, we all know it's not black and white. There are lots of different ways that these can go. There's what kind of vulnerability, who else is involved, I'm not getting into all this. This is for essentially, if I were talking to a room full of marketers, I would go through this. Now I'm going to go through this, and I'm not going to go through this with you guys as a room full of marketers because you're not, unless I'm completely confused, not where I think I am. But it'll give you an example of the things that marketers need to understand, or communications folks need to understand, and where you might be able to provide inputs. Because, again, not everybody is like me. Some people have lives and don't immerse themselves in security culture in order to learn. So just starting up here. So if there's a vulnerability, is it a malware vulnerability? Is it the ransomware vaccine? Stop. Don't put out a press release. Don't do a blog. We'll tip off a cyber criminal. This is a tricky one, the investigations thing. But in general, unless you've already talked to folks that you needed to talk to, stop. Have you shared with the company that there's a vulnerability in their product? No. Stop. Why is this so hard? So yes, you have. Is there a coordinated disclosure? I could keep going on. I like saying stop, but no, stop. It drives me insane why marketers are like, well, it's okay. We're just going to put this out anyway because it shows how smart we are. No, it doesn't. It backfires. It makes you look like an idiot because you didn't coordinate disclosure. Is it educational? Is it actually going to help? Does it meet the standards desk requirements that I talked about earlier? Yes. Okay, then, keep going. Is the message scary? If it's not scary, or if it's not spun, if it's not threatening people to be eaten by bears, if they don't do something, keep going. Are your researchers credited? That seems so basic, but I've seen so many situations, and I've talked to so many research friends, where they've been told, we're not going to put your name on this research that you did. You spent 6 months working on this because, this is for the company. And we want the company to look good. Again, that's bullshit. Pardon my language, by the way. Figured you guys don't mind. That's wrong. People should get credit for their work, and especially in the case of security research. There's so many risks that people take personally to do the things that they do. They have to protect their own OPSEC. They're risking getting doxxed. They're risking their family getting doxxed. They're risking all kinds of reputational damage, everything. Why would you not give them credit for that? It doesn't make any sense. So if you're on a marketing team, or if you're working with a marketing team, and they say, we're not going to credit the researchers because we want to put the logo on it, that's not okay. Absolutely not okay. And a good company wants its employees to feel good about the work they do and get the credit for the work that they do. But if you get all those things, yay! Again, this is very simplified, very basic, but it's a start. And this is how I want more people to think in my world. And this is the type of stuff that I would like to see you guys encourage people like me and my teams to do. You're like, I don't care. Crazy lady with chicken mohawk or whatever that was. You have to care. I mean, if you don't care, what are you doing? You're working to reduce harm, and you do so much, but then you look at all these communications flying by that are making things harder for either your internal users, or your clients, or the community at large, or the general consumer. We should all care. It's not a one and done. It's not a fix this flaw. It's not a, examine this, and then we have an answer, and poof, it's done. It's also the transmission of information and how that's transmitted that helps people either be more secure or be more at risk. So, I urge all of you to be part of this change. I know that sounds really cheesy. Be a part of the solution. Change is in you. I didn't mean for it to come out like that, but I kind of want it to come out like that. I could go around to every conference in security and talk about this. One, I wouldn't have a lot of time. I'd be exhausted. Two, I think as much as I do have a voice in this industry and I do have a voice about marketing, I think hearing it from the people that are most affected by it are the things that are what is going to move the needle the fastest and the most effectively. And that also takes me to a little side rant, if you guys will endure it. Well, you might have to. I mean, you could always leave. But, one of the things that is a challenge, there's the conversation about women in security. We need more women in security, absolutely. I was super excited yesterday when Marion was talking about Black Hoodie and what she's doing to help other women get into reverse engineering. It's fantastic. I get into these conversations, and I talk about women in security, and I get, you're so cute. You're not a woman in security, you're in marketing. Excuse me? I'm not a technologist. I can't do what you guys do. But I've been in this industry for 19 years. And I think us working together is us, again, the marketers, the business leaders, the researchers, the engineers, is going to create another form of inclusivity that helps drive all personalities and all types of folks who have an interest or skill or job in security forward. And that's very important. So how do you do that? Let me tell you. Just so happens, create a culture shift, one that benefits everyone. Now, it's not one person that's going to create the culture shift. It's a combination of communications, advocating with your peers, setting examples. Speak with your management about creating an ethics or standards board when it comes to how a company talks about security. Again, whether you're a vendor, a consultancy, manufacturer, the makers, or even if you're in school, and bring it up when you guys are talking about, policy and standards and things. How do you work some of the business ethics into the outcomes? Express the end state you want is more truth and better security. Truth will lead to better security. And be willing to support. Don't just say, we should do this. This is a great idea. No, be willing to support. Or find people, if you don't have time, if you're going to school and you have 4 different jobs and you don't have time, find somebody that can help or that wants to or has the time. If the company doesn't have a coordinated disclosure policy, that's a concern, because most companies should. Build one. Find out who to work with to build one. If you were with a small company, it's probably easy to do something kind of scrappy. If you were the larger company, you might have to engage in legal and communications teams. Sometimes I hear from people, well, we're not a security company. We make this widget, so we don't need that. So you're saying that there's no risk of your widget ever having a vulnerability or being used for malicious activity? Have a policy. Require credit for your work. I touched on this a bit ago. I feel very strongly about this. I would never, ever, 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 ever put a company byline or a business leader byline on a researcher's work. It undermines the research. And it's just not, it's not nice. It sounds so naive, but it's just not nice. You don't do that. If you're told that someone else's name might go on your work, say no. I know that might be hard. It's easy for me to say. I'm standing up here, I'm a C-level executive, and I can wield all this power and sorcery and magic, right? Allegedly. But it's harder when you're starting on your career to advocate for yourself. But that is the best thing you can do. And that is something that can remain true as you grow in your career as well, is advocating for what's right for you and ultimately the community and finally the users. And call out the marketers, like I said earlier. Tell us, tell your teams, tell the folks, if you're on social media and you see those discussions about, oh, these stupid marketing people, they did this, this, and that. There are a lot of them, because there are a lot of, people aren't stupid, but there are a lot of stupid tactics. Jump in and say, maybe you should do it this way instead of, you dumb, right? Constructive feedback goes a long way, and it helps everyone. So if we do that, again, my utopia, we can get rid of this part. Those stay the same. Again, very basic. And then we can get everybody on the path to reduce harm. And my slide's not working. There we go. Which would make everybody happy. It's not that simple, and it seems very naive. But it's a small step, but just imagine, there's a lot of crazy news out there right now, and we don't have all day. But when it comes to security stuff, what if you started seeing less and less, or stopped seeing so much of the same old fear tactics, victim shaming, FUD, inaccurate reporting, and so on? I would sure love to see that. That's all I got. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Jennifer. Any questions from the floor? Yes? One question?
Oh, we're doing questions, sure.
Hi.
Hi.
I really like your talk, and I think marketing is really important from a lot of different sides in infosecurity. I have a question for you. What security guys need to do when their company, like for medical devices, have a marketing who going outside and say, okay, we have our good medical device, secure medical device, that is connected online, so you can read your private mail or listen Spotify, while every security guy say that's not safe. How they should communicate to the marketing and say, hello, this is really wrong, but the board and the marketing say we want that.
So how do you say it's wrong when the marketing is set on a plan to say whatever when you know it's going to put more people at risk, essentially? Okay, I know you had a mic, but I just want to repeat that for myself and then the rest of the room. It's a tough one because the motivation for most marketers isn't to make things more secure. I talked a little bit about that, whether it should be or not, when it should be. I think it comes down to being measured and using data. So there's a lot of published reports out there that are good examples of the reputational damage that a company can face if they put out something that later might have been known to be vulnerable or might have known to create more harm. So if you can pull some of those, because while the marketers that aren't motivated by security, that are more motivated by we got to make money, we got to get the brand out, they are motivated by protecting the company's reputation. So a lot of times you just have to know what motivates people. And so it's a little easier if you were at a security vendor because your marketing team just really should care about it. But if you're a medical device manufacturer, what have you, where they don't think about that, bring it up to reputation, long-term business viability, connect those dots of if we do this and it becomes known that we did this knowing that it's not well represented and that there's risk involved, it's going to have this impact on the business. And understand that may be different than your motivation. You want to do what's right, but you have to know your audience and know what's going to motivate them and change their actions. That's the best general advice that I can provide.
Thanks. Any other questions from the floor? Yes?
Great talk. I really enjoyed it. Thank you.
Thank you.
You say that if a vulnerability is found in a piece of malware, that it shouldn't be disclosed. How do you rationalize that with the benefits to the users? For example, ransomware, that there's a vulnerability that will allow the users to unlock their files again. If you keep that secret, nobody benefits. Yes, the author doesn't get to fix their code, but nobody gets to benefit from the unfixed code if nobody finds out about it.
Right. That's actually a very good question and something that I should have talked about when I went through that part of the slide or part of the presentation. I want to make sure that it's clear that I'm not saying keep it secret. There's a lot of sharing that researchers can do in trusted communities. There's a lot of disclosure that can happen, on the different secure lists, et cetera, to let other defenders know what they can do to help the users. Obviously, it gets a little bit more complicated when you're talking about general consumer users that might not be part of larger organizations. What I'm concerned about is before any of that happens, doing a big marketing splash campaign, and sometimes those things can happen. I did not see the inner workings of this, but if I were to guess, it would be there was a meeting that had different leaders in different business groups talking about, because this came from a security vendor, talking about we have this thing, we have this ransomware vaccine, we're going to do X, Y, and Z. Here's the step that we're going to take to provide protection. These are the teams that we're working with. Here are the other companies we're going to partner with, et cetera. Someone in that meeting probably said, ooh, that sounds really sexy. I'm going to push out a big blog on that. Can you give me any documentation you have on that, just for my education, just so I know? And then it's blasted out, and those folks aren't ready. They haven't had a chance to coordinate. And that's the big risk. And again, it's a gray area, right? But in the one instance that I was thinking about, it's just risk. It's just assessing the risk. And I think some people might say on the marketing side, well, we would have missed an opportunity to get PR if we didn't do that. Well, there's no opportunity for marketing that is greater than the opportunity for scaring people, right? So I think it's a balance there. I hope that helps. I'm not trying to be wishy-washy. It's just a very gray area, but that's more what I meant, is no loud bang, but share amongst yourselves and help the users. Sure.
Any other questions? No? But well, Jennifer, you'll be around throughout today anyway. Yes. So if you have any questions, please feel free to approach her. Right. And please join me to thank Jennifer once again.
Thank you so much.